so let's get started then with our first session. As I mentioned, we're going to be talking about improving on-time delivery for, that it's not all about the scheduling, and our presenter here is from Lilly Works. So Lilly Works does give manufacturers a simple way to solve the problems that get in the way of on-time performance and flow. And you're probably going to wonder how. And we're going to find out. They revolutionize production planning and execution to simplify managing your workflow, your workforce and resources. So joining us today is Lilly Works President and CEO, and who has been very helpful in helping manufacturing companies improve their performance for the last 30 years. So please join me in welcoming the President and CEO of Lilly Works, Mark Lilly.
Thank you, John. Thank you and good morning. How many folks here are with manufacturing companies, roughly, say, 500 employees or less? Okay. How many are with top tier, tier one type companies, and maybe you're managing suppliers, or you have, integral to that? Certainly Pratt and others. Okay, thanks. And anyone here with consulting type companies that help manufacturers like the tier ones or tier one suppliers with on-time delivery or improving that type of performance? Okay, thank you. So this is really for you a little bit of both tactics and theory going into this conversation. I was at a national user conference for a company that actually owns 4 different manufacturing ERP systems, and we were kind of there as a exhibiting with to help improve on-time delivery and that sort of thing. And one of the users of one of these ERP systems, which has finite scheduling embedded in it, came up to us and was fairly frustrated and said, I'm really just trying to answer 3 questions. Right? Where is the job and how is it progressing? What job do I need to work on next in any department, in any work center? And finally, how can I tell my customer with some level of confidence when they're going to get the order? Okay. In spite of all the wonderful functionality that's in ERP systems today around scheduling, really very few manufacturers are able to answer these questions for themselves. Okay. My dad, Dick Lilly, actually founded 4 different manufacturing ERP systems. Software International in the 60s and 70s. Profiki was founded in 1980. Visual Manufacturing, now owned by Infor, in 1992. And then Lilly Works, which I'll get to in a moment. Both Profiki and Visual Manufacturing are actually still being sold net new out in the marketplace today. You can go to Infor and buy Visual today. And they both have excellent finite scheduling embedded in them. Like I mentioned, unfortunately, really very few of the thousands of manufacturing companies using either of those products are able to utilize that functionality to improve their on-time delivery or reduce lead times. Okay. Lilly Works was started about 5 years ago as a new manufacturing cloud-based ERP system. And at that time, recognizing that we needed to do something different than that traditional 40-year-old scheduling model, we came up with a new approach called protected flow manufacturing, and that is embedded in this new ERP. Well, we went to market with the ERP and the new scheduling approach, and folks really liked that, but said, gee, I'm not ready to replace my entire ERP. So we kind of said, okay, makes sense. So we actually pulled that functionality out and have a product offering called Protected Flow Manufacturing that ties into any ERP, okay, to help solve the scheduling and planning piece of it as well. Okay. To reiterate, it's not just with Visual or Profiki, right? Really across the board. There's a lot of ERP systems out there. There's a lot of APS systems, and they have terrific functionality. Unfortunately, they're based on the same 40-year-old model that we'll talk about. And they struggle with the whole scheduling approach. Well, why is that? What's the model we're talking about? Well, here I'm simulating the backward finite scheduling of 5 work orders, 5 jobs. What just happened? Well, each work order gets sorted by due date, and that's typically the default priority, right? And then all the operations in each work order get put into the capacity picture. Next work order and due date sequence into the capacity picture, and so on and so forth. So the algorithm, what's happening here is really more around capacity loading than it is on truly telling you out in the shop what needs to be worked on, what needs to be focused on right now, right? The other big issue with prioritizing by due date is, it makes sense, right? And when MRP and finite scheduling was created and North America was making refrigerators and stereos, probably made sense. We're not today. Just about every manufacturer is high mix, right? You will have jobs, if you're a high mix environment, that are due, say, 2 months from now, that are much more in danger of being late if you don't get started on it today than a job due even a week or 2 from now. So if you're prioritizing by due date, you're actually paying attention to those things due earlier at the expense of those things due later, which is why most manufacturers feel like they're in this constant expedite mode, right? We're always trying to catch up because they don't have that visibility of not only when the right time to start the job is, but even in process, what should I be paying attention to right now? As I mentioned, it places all of the operations in a job or work order into the capacity picture at one time, just not reflective of how execution truly happens out in production. In any of these systems, you have to have very, very accurate setup and run times, okay, because that's what's building your schedule. So if they're not very accurate, whatever plan you do create probably isn't very credible, right? And finally, and especially in a backward scheduling environment, there's really no room for variability, right? To put it nicely, in manufacturing, and we all know, right, stuff happens, okay? And if we're not anticipating that, if we don't have any room for that stuff to be happening, then we're going to get ourselves into trouble, okay? So in a backward schedule mode, we're actually telling the system, let's plan to finish the last operation of every work order the day it's due. That's crazy, right? There's no room for variability there. So what happens? We run these programs, it loads the capacity, it comes up with an order of operations, we print out dispatch lists, we send those out to the shop floor, and the folks out there look at them and go, where'd you get the order of these jobs and operations, right? There's often a disconnect between probably what they heard in the production meeting that morning versus what this capacity loading algorithm is trying to tell them what to do, okay? How do we fix it, okay? We need a new approach. Back in the 60s and 70s, one of the fathers of MRP, George Plossel, Joe Orlicki, who literally wrote the book on MRP in 1975, used this first law of manufacturing from George. And it still holds true today, that all benefits implied in a manufacturing company will be directly proportional to the speed of flow of information and materials. Now, if you spend any time in a manufacturing environment, you get that, right? The faster we're able to move materials through their processes, assuming the same or better quality, there's going to be all sorts of benefits to that, right? Faster lead times, better on-time delivery, better reputation in the marketplace, and better financial performance of the company, right? What manufacturers need, though, is the right information, where the work is happening, so the people there can make the right decisions to enable materials to flow faster, okay? That's what we're after. That's how we're going to do things different. And we're going to apply 3 principles from manufacturing improvement philosophies and techniques. You'll recognize them, okay? But we're going to put them all together and use them in conjunction with one another. And the first we've already covered, and that is that stuff happens in manufacturing. So like a catcher's mitt, let's put that up, not knowing what's going to come down the pipe, but that we're ready to catch whatever does, okay? When we tie into another ERP, we very simply pull over whatever work order information is over there, okay, or jobs. Job or work order number, the part, the quantity, and the due date. We're also going to pull over the operation level detail. So this is actually from whatever setup and run times you have, okay? And again, it doesn't have to be super, super accurate, and you'll see why in a moment. Just give us the times you have. We'll work with it, okay? Now, you know and I know, being in manufacturing, if I'm going to start the job here, there's no way I'm going to get all 4 of these operations done in perfect sequence for Wednesday, 2 days later, right, Wednesday afternoon. I'm going to have contention in between those resources. I'm going to have stuff happening during the operations, right, tools breaking, machines and material running out, what have you, okay? So I need some time protection here, right? I need a time buffer. And in fact, we're using that today, right? You ask any manufacturer, what's your lead time, right? When I tell Pratt what my lead time is, what is it? 6 to 8 weeks. Say it's 6 weeks. Well, they know that the actual touch time, right, if nothing else were in the shop and I just had that job, you had the material, all the people, all the machines were standing at the ready, how long would it actually take to manufacture that 6-week part? A week, maybe, if it has to go outside and back. Maybe a few days, maybe hours, right? So manufacturers are using buffers today. So let's acknowledge that, and let's talk about the buffer sizing, right? Is it too big? Is it too small? Is it in the ballpark? Okay. And over time, we're also going to use this in the priority mechanism. And maybe over time, we'll see the opportunity to actually reduce those buffers and reduce that 6 weeks, right, that would represent, maybe comfortably down to 5 or 4 or less, okay? The second concept is controlling how much goes into work in process and WIP, okay? One of the things a lot of manufacturers struggle with is the visibility, right, of the right time to start a job, right? I certainly don't want to start a job too late. If I were in production, I don't want to put my backside on the line, right, and have something start too late, already get behind the 8 ball. So if I don't have visibility at the right time, I'm probably going to start it on the early side. Maybe way early, to be safe, right? There's also this other idea, this sort of intuitive idea, right, that, gee, the sooner we get material out in the shop, the sooner it's going to come out the other side as finished, right? Not so much. In fact, there's a concept called Little's Law, right? John Little was a Q-theory mathematician at MIT in the 50s, and he proved this pretty simple-looking formula that became a law under his name. And it simply says that the number of things or people or items that go into a system, and a system can be an amusement park, manufacturing shop floor, a highway, right, is directly related to the length of time that any one of those things, people or items, is in the system. So, if you drive rush hour in a metropolitan environment or road, right, highway, the more cars that go onto the highway, you're going to be on that highway a lot longer, right, if you've been to LA or most cities today. You go down to Disney World on spring break, you have a list of 5 rides you want to go on. You're going to be at Disney World a whole lot longer than if you go this time of year, right, or September when everybody's back in school. Same thing in a manufacturing shop floor. The more jobs, more work orders you send out into WIP, the longer period of time any one of those work orders is going to be in WIP. The neat part about this is that the inverse is true as well. The fewer work orders you send out into production, the faster any one of those jobs is going to flow through all of its resources it needs to get done. Now, you obviously need a balance point, right? We don't want to be starving WIP, right? But we want to be careful not to send too much out as well. So how do we do that here? Here's this execution plan we're building from the information from the ERP. We have the due date, we have the work that needs to be done. We've now assigned the time buffer. And, well, isn't that interesting? Way over on that left-hand side, Now we have an objective starting point for this job. Now I do have visibility. If we've agreed that that buffer is a comfortable amount of time within which that I can get those 4 operations done, then why would I send material out any sooner and tick off Professor Little, knowing that I'm going to be clogging up whips, slowing things down, and confusing the true priorities? Okay? Third concept is, okay, so we agreed due date, incredibly important piece of information, right? That's our commitment to our customer, right? But a poor priority mechanism. So if we don't want to prioritize by due date, then what? What should we use? Okay. Once this work order is released, simply by the passage of time, I don't have to run any scheduling programs. Simply as time goes by, that buffer gets eaten up. And the basis of the priority becomes the percentage of that time protection remaining. So the less time protection I have, it's relative, right? Doesn't matter if we're looking at a 2-day rush job, 2-week or 2-month job, right? Percentage-wise, the less time protection I have left, the higher the relative priority of that job compared to all the others in WIP, okay? Now, we also bring into consideration the amount of work still remaining, left to be done, and we create a formula out of this. We call it the threat level. How much in danger of being late is this job relative to all the other jobs in my plant, okay? At the start or the outset, we've got 100% work remaining, 100% of the time protection remaining. The threat level is 1. The idea is if I'm doing work faster than that buffer's getting eaten, the threat level is going to drop below 1. On the other hand, if the buffer's getting eaten faster than I'm reporting the work complete, threat level's going higher and higher than 1. Okay? Here I've reported operation 10 complete. I'm down to 85% work remaining. I've also eaten 25% of my buffer, though. Maybe I dilly-dallied, maybe I didn't, I had material issues, maybe somebody didn't show up. But regardless, I'm at a threat level slightly over 1. Still fairly confident I'll get this out on time. Now I've reported operation 20 fully complete, down to 60% work remaining. I ate only 10% more of that time protection, so I'm actually at a threat level under 1. Here, I'm very confident that I'm going to get this job out on time, right? Whoops. 2 days went by, haven't reported any more work complete, but I sure ate the other half of that buffer. I'm sitting at a threat level of 2. It's not late yet, but this work order is much more in danger of being late than it was previously. To emphasize the point, if I still had all the work remaining, I'd be at a threat level over 3. So all we're going to do is take these priorities and in real time show the folks out where the work needs to happen, where these decisions need to happen, the situation, okay? And it can look like this. It can be a printout. If you have an existing MES system, we can send these values out to the MES, okay, however you want to publish them. Okay. Here's all the work orders for this particular department, and by default, they're going to be sorted by descending threat level status. Okay. The colors, you can configure what you want to, what value range you want to see as red, yellow, or green. I often joke if I'm talking to a manufacturing company, you know, gee, this never happens, right? Certainly Pratt or Lockheed never changes their mind, right? Just joking. So here's a work order. I've got 3 days of work here. This could be 3 operations, could be 30. I've got, at the start of every work order, threat level is 1. Here, 8 days after the release, I've reported 1 of the days of work complete, so I'm down to 66% work remaining. We've eaten 7 of the 12 days of buffer. I'm down to 5 over 12, or 41%. So sitting at a threat level of 1.6 at this point, when customer calls and says, I need this 3 days earlier, please. Okay, what happens? Date changes in the ERP, it flows over, and in real time, this execution plan shifts now over to the left. So instead of 5 days of time protection, I've just got 2. My denominator just dropped. My threat level pops up from a 1.6 to almost a 4. This is going to expedite itself up the list for every operation, every department that still needs to get through. Here's what it might look like in action. I've got a job down here. This is, it's hard to see, job 10,005. It's in the green zone, pretty happy at a threat level just over 1. Customer calls, date changes in the ERP, flows over, and in real time, that's now my top job with the highest threat level. Didn't have to run a scheduling program to do that. What we like to do is, when we start out with a manufacturing company, bring in all their work orders and show them what their current status looks like. This is what's called the threat level map. Okay, so every dot here represents a work order or a group of work orders in that threat level area. So what I've got here is everything over on this wall. So I'd want my work orders to walk down this diagonal where roughly work is getting complete as that buffer time's getting eaten. The ones over up against this wall still have work left to be done, but the buffer is essentially gone, right? They're either late right now or they're definitely going to be late, okay? Now, almost equally bad, perhaps, is jobs that I've sent out too early, right? So these jobs over here, and in fact, I've got 2 groups. If I look at the numbers, the number here represents the number of jobs in each. I think I've got almost 82 work orders that have 2/3 of the work complete on them, and my buffer time hasn't even started. All that work's been done before that start date, okay? Now, if I'm sharing resources, that's probably a reason why I've got so many late jobs over here. I'm paying attention to the wrong things, okay? So simply by publishing these priorities and truly executing them out on the floor, what's that going to do? That's going to bring my attention back over to these late jobs. I'm going to flush those out. I'm going to stop releasing jobs too early, and for the most part, I should see this movement, right, from the walls down to the diagonal, where I'm executing most of my jobs as time is going by on their way to on-time delivery, okay? This happens quickly. Okay, this happens about in a lead time and a half of your average lead time. So this customer took about 2 to 3 months. So yeah, that's an average lead time, about 6 to 8 weeks. It happens quickly. We actually, when you bring up the Weather Channel and you see the color chart, and you kind of know whether or not you want to grab an umbrella as you walk out the door. We did in the latest release, we enhanced this visual to give you a heat map view of it. Right? So you know what's in the red zone. That's pretty obvious, right? Those are my late jobs, or the ones that are definitely going to be late. And here's the ones that are little. We're going to be a little cool on those. Maybe you released them too early. Okay. And we also changed the direction, thinking, upward is probably a better indication of progress than from top to bottom. So, where is this job and how is it progressing? So at any time I can bring up a job, and I'm going to see the due date, as we mentioned. That's the right-hand side of this execution plan. On the left-hand side, there's my start date and my release date. I can see the actual work completed. If you're reporting work complete in your ERP, we're going to bring that over. If you're not, you can do it here. And then we're going to show you the work remaining. So here I've reported operation 10 and half of 20 complete. I've got the other half of 20, 30, and 40 left to do. Now, again, theoretically, I could get this job done in 2 days, right? Well, that's assuming that I don't have anything else going on in the shop, right? Which probably isn't a good assumption, because I probably have a few hundred, maybe a few thousand other work orders going on. But regardless, for where is the job and how is it progressing, there's the time protection remaining. And I'm going to create that so at all times and in real time, I have this information. From those 2 values, from work remaining, time protection, I'm going to calculate the threat level and publish that out on the shop. Okay? So as time goes by, that threat level is always as up to date as how I'm reporting labor as well. Okay? So what are we doing here? These are actually the words of one of our customers when we asked him, what is it you like most about PFM? And he said, I like that we're providing this actionable intelligence out to where the work is happening so the folks out there can make the right decisions, right? That's really what's happening. We're providing a hyper-focus across the entire company, and especially in production, in terms of what work orders need to be paid attention to right now. We're giving you that visibility. At the same time, we're making sure you're not clogging WIP, so reducing WIP, enabling the speeding up of flow, per Little's law. Okay? Speeding flow, you're going to see all sorts of benefits to that, per George Plossel. That is execution. To answer, how can I tell my customer when I'm going to get this job out to them, we use a predictive analytics tool. It's actually a simulation tool. It is a program you can run at any time. And it essentially shows, so here again for this picture, when and how am I going to get these 4 operations done based on everything else that's going on in production, right? So when you run this predictive analytics tool, it shows you just that, where each of these operations is predicted to start and finish based upon all the other priorities that will be happening out in my shop, okay? So I can actually see, in spite of this being able to, theoretically I could get this done in 2 days. Based on everything else, I'm actually going to be 2 days late on it, okay? So after you run this program, you can bring up the results of this program. Now, be careful. This looks like a schedule, right? But I'm not going to take the results of this and go tell my folks to go try to execute it, okay? We're not doing that anymore. We already have our real-time priorities. But what this does show me is out in the future, it is a pretty good picture of where my bottlenecks are going to be, the severity of those bottlenecks. And then if I click on any one of these work orders, it's going to highlight all the operations. It's going to bring up the execution plan for that particular work order as well and show me how, why, and when each of those remaining operations is predicted to finish based upon all my other work going on in the shop. Okay. Now, when this program runs, it also stores predictive analytic information, specifically things like a predicted wait time. So as it's doing its simulation, it keeps track on, I wanted to place this operation here out in the future, but it's bumping up some other job, it's having priority, so it's bumping out, and it actually tracks the predicted wait time by every operation on every work order. And then you can summarize that, right, up by job, by part, by customer, by resource, or shop-wide. So I can get a view or a graph, what's my overall predicted wait time out in the future? And then you can also do what we call what if or alternative game plans. So I have my primary game plan, and then I can set up, this particular customer has a 4-day work week, 10 hours every day. So we said, what if we identified the bottleneck, and we said, what if we worked Fridays just in that bottleneck? What would that do to our overall predicted lateness, okay? And it cut it down from a little over 500 to a little over 400, and then so you can see it visually or bringing it up, and it'll actually show you the map. And there's my delta for November. Oops, it's a little under 100 days that I'll be reducing my overall lateness through my shop. Okay. Deployment, this is in the cloud up on Amazon. We have a lot of ITAR customers in the standard Amazon controlling that. If they need to be cloud, gov.cloud, then we have that available as well. It is software as a service, very low upfront investment to get going on it. Connects to any ERP, either through a spreadsheet import or through automated connector technology, and to bring your information over. By default, it's one way, but if you need to go back, there are APIs you can use to send information back to the source ERP as well. Okay. As I mentioned, the results on the execution are very fast, and the analytics are quite strong in terms of answering those questions for customers. My contact info, a couple white papers, and we recently had in Modern Machine Shop, we had a great article in the 2019, or the October issue on that actually highlights a machine shop using this. Questions?
What are, sorry, Adi from Shellcast. What are the steps you take to get manufacturers started on this software?
I'm sorry, what was?
Sorry. What are the steps you take to get a manufacturer started on this software?
Great question. So it's very simple. We just want to, we take the information you have. If you have electronic work orders already with operations on them, with, as I mentioned, 50 to 70% accuracy is what we're looking for in your setup and run times. And frankly, even if you don't have that, you can throw in a guesstimate and then over time see what your actuals are and adjust them accordingly. But it's that information. And then the next step during the implementation of this is a buffer sizing exercise. So there are different ways to dynamically, as that information is brought in from the ERP, the buffer is automatically and dynamically sized. And there are different ways to do that. So we talk about that. We talk about what size for particular part family, for a specific part, for even down to the job level. You can size those based on certain criteria. And we like to involve the operation folks, either the leads or even the operators themselves, because they're the ones who know what the buffer time should be, because they live it every day.
Does this have any ability to look at like stuck work orders or work orders that haven't moved and aging and that type of stuff?
Yes, absolutely. That's a great question. And in that priority list, if something is stuck, that's such a great question, because we find just through our walkthroughs with shop, there's a job stuck under the bench, right? That the people forget about. They literally don't have the visibility. If something's stuck, then that threat level is just going to go higher and higher and higher. Okay, so you can see that before the due date hits, right? That's why it's important to leave due date aside as a priority mechanism. This will show you much sooner that something's getting much in danger of being late.
And then do you normally do it like a daily kind of feed, or could you do it?
Great question, and it varies by shop. Some shops just want a once-a-day refresh of the priorities, as that's good enough. Others, want to know quickly, and maybe they're same-day type of thing, so we can set it up to pull every 5 minutes.
Any other question? Hold on.
Great question as well. Outside processing is just another step in the routing, okay? And actually, say you give us, it's going to be out for 10 days or 15 days. Right, it'll just simply be a 15-day step in that sequence of operations, and we typically won't add any more buffer. We're assuming your buffer is in that 15 days. That being said, we do optionally have, this is something you can use in the software. We actually have a outbound outside service buffer to protect against you sending it out too late, and we have an inbound outside service buffer to protect you against your outside vendor sending it back to you late. Okay. But key question is the visibility of outside services. Absolutely. Yep, this will provide that as well.
Any other questions? Okay, well, thank you very much, Mark. Let's please all say thanks to Mark with a round of applause.
Thank you.